Fill the Sangha with great virtue out of compassion for the sake of this assembly and all living beings. Please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death, and quickly realize non-birth. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Homage to the blessed. Namo Sadanto Sujedoye Olahadi Samyao Samputoje. Together. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。The unsurpassed, deep, profound, subtle, wonderful Dharma, in 100,000 million eons is difficult to encounter. Now that I've come to receive and hold it within my sight and hearing, I vow to fathom the thus come one's true and actual meaning. All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Venerable Masters, fellow cultivators, Dharma Masters, and all good and wise friends, Amitofo, welcome to Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. Today is August 29th. Also, it's the 16th of the 7th lunar month, if you use the moon as your calendar. And so today we've had a full day of events. But to begin the sutra lecture, what we do is we recite the title of the sutra, which you'll find on page 2, but the 2 is the Roman numeral 2, so it's an II. It's on the back of the front page, of the title page. It says homage to the great flower garland scripture of the Buddha's expanded Mahayana teachings. So we recite it in Chinese. The pronunciation is below. And this is, you could say, an opportunity just to invite the presence, the spirit of the Avatamsaka assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Say if we're really sincere, we let that energy into our hearts. So we'll recite it 7 times. Okay? Namo Davang Guang Vo Wa Yen Jing Wa Yen Nai Wei Bo Bu Zai. Namo Davang Guang Vo Wa Yen Jing Wa Yen Nai Wei Bo Bu Zai. Namo Davang Guang Vo Wa Yen Jing Wa Yen Nai Wei Bo Bu Zai. Namo Davang Guang Vo Wa Yen Jing Wa Yen Nai Wei Bo Bu Zai. Namo Davang Guang Vo Wa Yen Jing Wa Yen Nai Wei Bo Bu Zai. Namo Davang Guang Vo Wa Yen Jing Wa Yen Nai Wei Bo Bu Zai. Namo Davang Guang Vo Wa Yen Jing Wa Yen Nai Wei Bo Bu Zai. Okay, so welcome everybody to Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. I see we have a couple of new faces. So welcome to our sutra lecture. What we're studying tonight is called the Avatamsaka Sutra on Sanskrit, or if you look, it says the Great Flower Garden Scripture of the Buddha's Expanded Mahayana Teachings. So this is the full name of the title translated, and so this will be the text we'll be lecturing on tonight. What usually happens is we actually have one of, you could say the directing manager of the monastery, Reverend Heng Sure. He actually lectures from Australia. We actually come down with a projection screen. We have a very sophisticated internet setup where he's giving a lecture from Australia to the projector here. That's then getting webcasted around the world. And
the camera is on you guys so that he can see you instead of on us.
On us. And so, but this afternoon he said he's not feeling that well and asked if we could stand in. So we of course agreed to try to do our best to do the sutra lecture tonight. And we also have potentially a guest lecturer tonight, a special guest. Dharma Master Hung Lai happens to be in the monastery today, and so he may come down, around 8:15. We hope.
Hopefully, for everyone's sake, including us, 8 o'clock.
Yeah, so he has lots of stories. He's been a monk as long as Reverend Heng Sure. They left home together at the same time.
And Dharma Master Lai has been a monk longer than I remember being alive.
Yeah.
And I've been alive for a pretty long time. So
yeah, I think 1976 he left home. And so hopefully he'll come down and share some stories. He's a very great storyteller, and he tells stories about his time with our founder, Master Hua. So we'll have maybe different things tonight. But just to not spend too much more time, I wanted just to enter the sutra text. This sutra text is actually quite easy to approach, this particular, I think, chapter, because it talks about the heart of the Bodhisattva and gives really concrete stories that shows what's you can say the heart of the Bodhisattva, but also what the Bodhisattva thinks, how he goes about his everyday life, about his everyday actions. So where we are now, we're in practice number 1. This chapter is called the 10 Practices chapter, and we're in practice number 1. We're just starting a text. We're on page 5. If you please open your sutra text to page 5. And these 10 practices are, you could say, practices the Bodhisattva undertakes on his path to awakening. If you're familiar a little bit with Buddhism, if you're studying Buddhism in a class, these correspond to the paramitas, or the 6 perfections. There's actually 10 perfections in some lists, the 10 paramitas. It starts with giving, and then precepts or virtue, patience, vigor or energy or strength. You could say next one is concentration, and the 6th one is prajna, wisdom, is clear seeing, seeing the emptiness and the conditioned nature of reality, but then going through that. And so today we're on practice number 1, which is the practice of generosity, practice of giving. So what we do is we start by reading the sutra text together. We read the Chinese, and then we read the English. So I would invite you, if you don't have any Chinese, I will say one phrase, and then you can repeat after me. The character sounds are below the character sounds are below the words on the left side. And if you just for those who don't know any Chinese, there's different tonal marks. Chinese is a tonal language, so if you go they all mean different things. Like if you said the word ma, in some towns it would be horse, some would be mother, some would be question mark, some would be different things. So if you use the wrong tone, it's actually a completely different word. So if you pay attention, the line that goes up is the sound going up. If it's a hook, the sound goes down and then up again. If the sound line goes down and then a line down, that means the line goes downwards. So if you would like, please join in. If it's your first time trying to do it, just do your best. We're all learning Chinese, myself as well. I grew up here in America, so my Chinese is passable. Yeah, so, okay, we can put our palms together if you like. So we're on the bottom of page 5, on the word says 佛子. So on the bottom of the page left, on the left side. Okay, 佛子，何等为菩萨摩诃萨，欢喜恨。佛子，持菩萨为大施主，凡所有物，悉能会施，起心平等，无有回令，不忘果报，不求名称，不贪利养，但为救护一切众生，舍受一切众生，饶益一切众生。Okay, if we can go back to read the English. So we can read the English together. Disciples of the Buddha, what is the Bodhisattva Mahasattva's practice of happiness? Disciples of the Buddha, this Bodhisattva is a great benefactor. He can graciously give away all things with equanimity, free of stinginess and regret. He doesn't expect a reward, nor does he seek reputation or fame. He is not greedy for material benefits. He gives only to save and protect living beings, to take all beings into his care, and to benefit all beings. Okay, so this gives you a little bit of the flavor of the Avatamsaka Sutra. You can see the boundless quality of the Bodhisattva's heart. The word Bodhisattva literally means an enlightened being. Bodhi means awakened. Sattva means being, a living being. So it's often explained that this is a being who is awakened, who is, has a certain amount of awakening. Not quite to the stage of a Buddha yet, but on the path to Buddhahood. Or on the other hand, they also say it's a being who awakens beings. So this being a he or a she or he or a she, beyond gender, be a man or a woman, basically makes it their job to benefit other people. Benefit not just people, actually benefit all living beings. And so here is the first practice. And it says the practice of happiness, which I always thought was a really good way to describe giving. Because we often don't see the link sometimes that really the source of true happiness comes from giving. And so in the Buddhist sutras, and I think if you were to look into various maybe ancient cultures, giving is seen as the source of true happiness. So this bodhisattva is actually practicing how to give in this very selfless, completely generous way without any thoughts for himself. So I think maybe also what will be valuable is having a little bit of context with this sutra, because I think some people are just completely new to the sutra. So the sutra is actually, you could say, a handbook for bodhisattvas, people who want to follow the Buddha's path to awakening, to be just like the Buddha, to have his level of awakening, his perfection of virtue, and to follow in his path. And so the Buddha, upon awakening, said this sutra, spoke this sutra to, you could say, the great beings, these bodhisattvas, who heard it and were then studying it to then walk this path. And so this was often described as, under the Bodhi tree, the Buddha spoke this sutra. And those who had the affinities, who could hear it, they heard it. Those who didn't have the affinity, then they just saw the Buddha just sitting under the tree. So this sutra is spoken in a way that's, you could say, a little bit beyond our ordinary conscious mind that's just looking what's right in front of me. There's a broader kind of spiritual vision that this sutra is coming from. So that's the first thing. And so oftentimes people go, well, this seems to be beyond me. I can't do this. This is the bodhisattva's practices. I'm just, this ordinary person and don't have the affinities, don't have the potential to do this. But I think that's not really the attitude we want to have when we approach the sutra. What we learn in Buddhism is that we all have the awakened nature. The only reason we don't have we're not connected to is because we've covered it over. We've forgotten it. You could say, a little bit lost track of it. But the sutra is basically pointing us right back. This is your potential of your nature, of your heart. And my experience with the sutra is always that it's extremely, extremely, you could say pure, extremely, extremely good. It's like good without any shadow in it. You know, sometimes we watch movies in modern society, and if they show a movie that's just too good to be true, like the superhero in the movie, or the the narrator or the character, the protagonist is just too good, and the story's unbelievable. You know, so they had the superhero thing has a kind of a flaw, like a little character flaw, just to make it seem more realistic, or does something a little bit in a certain way. But this is very, very different. It takes, our cynical mind that looks for something that's a little bit off, so that we can feel like, okay, then that's real. It says, okay, just let that go. This is really what it means to be good. And you can do this. And actually all beings have this potential if they let go of their cynicism, let go of their doubting mind, let go of their own senses of low self-esteem and looking down upon themselves. This is our real potential.
So since we're giving some context to tonight's page, which is page 5. So first thing that struck me the first time I encountered this was, isn't getting stuff more leads to more happiness than giving? So, okay, I don't know even why I said that. Put it to one side. What I actually wanted to say was that my definition, the best definition I had explained to me regarding what a bodhisattva is a bodhisattva is someone who is trying to fulfill his potential as a human being. That means he recognizes in him what it means to be human, humanity. And what he strives for is to fulfill his potential for different aspects of what it means to be human. And the result of fulfilling that is that some people call you a Buddha. When you have perfected your humanity, you become a Buddha. But that's not the goal. The goal is, as we will see as we explore the text, is in these 10 practices. So the first one is giving. The second one is a way of life, how you see the people around you, how you respect people, how you treat them, and conversely, how you treat yourself and how you see yourself. Third one, patience. Fourth one, having the vigor. Did you run through all those?
I went to six.
You went
of
to
them.
6? Okay, so
Maybe
the
seven, eight,
fourth
nine.
one is having the vigor, how would I say? The strength to wake up every day and say, yes, this is what I really want to do. That vigor. And a lot of that comes from giving, because you realize that you're not doing it for yourself, which is really easy to do. And then the fifth one is concentration, so that you're not confused. And when you're concentrated and you're not being distracted by all the world around you, it gives rise to wisdom, a way of seeing things as they are. What does that mean? It means, say, if this, to someone, most of you here, this is just what we call it's called a wooden fish, because there's a fish carved on it, and it makes a sound, which you all heard. So you just see it as what it is, a wooden fish. But if I get a bit, say, taken in by a story, say someone comes to me and says, oh, this fish has been used by the Buddha 3,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago. And he passed it down to Ananda, the first patriarch, who passed it down to the second patriarch, who passed it down to Bodhidharma, who then went to China, and passed it down to the first patriarch of China, and so on, and now it's for you. So I don't see it for what it really is. I get taken in by all the stories that we attach to things. So having wisdom means seeing things for what they are. This will one day maybe break. A car will not stay new for very long. A cup might break. Things don't last. Relationships, for example, even the body does not last. So that's wisdom, seeing things the way they are. And the seventh one is, this is going to get tough. Expedience, meaning how to teach, is that right?
Yeah, you can see that.
Okay, meaning knowing what to say to people at the right time to help them. That's one way of seeing it. Number 8 is wow again. Wows can be seen as how you define what you're doing, your determination. I'm doing this to save all living beings. That's very characteristic of a bodhisattva. Number 9 is then when you do all this, you have the ability to help people in greater ways. Think about it as, say, if I had $10, I could help based on $10. If I had $1 million, I could do a lot more. The ability to do more. And 10 is then finally getting the knowledge or the true wisdom that comes from practicing this. So the Bodhisattva understands this, and he seeks through these 10 methods to perfect his humanity. Yeah.
Okay, so just to continue with the text, what we do is we usually go through word by word. And so the first one is, it says Fozi, disciples of the Buddha. I think that's pretty straightforward. These are people who basically wants to study with the Buddha. Some people say when we take refuge and we say, Buddha, we take you as our teacher. We want to follow your teachings. That's kind of like the first step to practice, is you make that commitment. Okay, I'm going to try it out. It's like going to school. You sign up for school. You say, okay, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to go to college. And when you do, if something changes, I think a couple of the students now I know just joined we have a Buddhist university, and they just joined the university. I'm sure it's very different now, going to those classes than just hanging out in sutra lectures, right? I'm sure you signed up. Now you're like, I have to write my papers, I have to really study the sutras. Somebody's going to pay attention to my learning. It's very different. And so it's a little bit like that. Once you're signed up, you're a little bit on the Buddha's radar. you're saying, I'm willing to be taught. So the next one, Bodhisattva, we mentioned. Mahasattva is actually a great being. Maha means great. Sattva again means being, so it's a great being. So this Bodhisattva is an awakened being, but it's not just any awakened being, it's a great being. So Bodhisattvas have different, you can say, levels of ability, levels of awakening. So this Bodhisattva is quite an awakened Bodhisattva. So what is this Bodhisattva's practice of happiness? It says disciples of the Buddha. This Bodhisattva is a great benefactor. So I think everybody knows what benefactor is, right? People who give, somebody who supports other people. In the ancient times in India, actually the wealth of somebody was measured by how many people they could support. So there's one really famous Buddhist layman called Avatamsaka, who was the one who donated the Buddha, they call it Jetavana, the Jeta's grove. And this place was where the Buddha spent much of his time in India. And the story goes that he was a very, very wealthy layman. And he was actually, his name actually means the benefactor of the orphans and the widowed. Solitary. That's solitary, but solitary literally means the widowed. Because in India, if you imagine, if you're a widow, you have no one to support you. Maybe your husband's no longer around. So what happens to you? You're really kind of stuck. I don't think back then they had the same as modern times, where we kind of had the way for people can go out and make a living. Back then, I think in India, if you didn't have your husband around and making a living, and you probably couldn't get married again, you're really stuck. And so Anathapandika.
Yeah, back then as a widow, I don't think you get married, remarried. You stay a widow.
Yeah, so it's real tough. And so Anathapandika supported many, many orphans and many, many widows. So he was really a great benefactor. And so when he met the Buddha, he was so overjoyed to meet the Buddha. There's a huge story around that too, but I'll save you that one. I'll just go to the Jeta Grove. Is that he really wanted the Buddha close to where he was. And so he looked around. The Buddha accepted his offer for a place. And so he looked around. He found, where's the best place? Where can I set up a monastery that's far enough away from the city so it's not so noisy, but close enough so people can go there and get the teachings? So he found this grove, which is the Prince's Grove, Jeta's Grove. And in this grove, because it was Prince Jeta's Grove, the people thought, you can't buy this. This is, he's not going to sell it. So he went to the Prince Jeta and said, I want to purchase your grove because I want to offer it to the Buddha. So Prince Jeta, of course, didn't want to sell his grove. It was his kind of his own little park, right? And so he made a little bit of a joke. He said, if you can cover the ground with gold, I'll sell it to you. If you can cover it with gold, I'll sell it to you. Not the ground. He says, if you cover it with gold, I'll sell it to you. And so he said, this is a joke. He thought, impossible. Never would he cover it with gold. So Avatamsaka was, okay. So he goes and gets all his treasures, all his treasure. He empties it and makes it all into gold and just starts laying the ground, gold piece by gold piece. And he covers the whole ground with gold. And then he goes to Prince Jeta and he goes, I want to buy your land because I covered the entire place with gold. Prince Jeta comes and takes a look and goes, whoa, I didn't actually mean to sell it. I don't actually want to sell it. Take back your gold. This is. I just was just saying a joke. I think you were taking me seriously. And then Anathpantika said, you're a prince, and if you're a prince, in the past in India, I don't know so much now, but ideally our leaders of our nation would be very honest. He said, you're a prince, and so your word really needs to count. You can't just make jokes casually like that. So if you make a promise, you have to keep it. And so the prince said, okay, that's true. And said, okay, so I'll give you the land, but however, the trees you didn't cover with gold. So what I'll do is I'll make that my offering to the Buddha. So Anathapindika thought about it and said, no problem, okay. So they both gave the land to the Buddha. Anathapindika gave the land, and Prince Jeta gave the trees. Right? So that's say one story of a great benefactor. And he was something that the stories go on and on about his level of generosity. He gave at one point, he gave away every single thing. And then at some point all his wealth came back. He just gave endlessly. And so that was somebody of great virtue. And so that's the spirit of a benefactor. So here we go to the next one. He says, he can graciously give away all things with equanimity, free of stinginess and regret. So this, I think, is a very interesting spirit, if you think about it, about how we maybe normally give, or how at least I normally give. I say I'm a little bit ashamed of myself because I don't think I'm a very good giver. My mind's always calculating. I'm always calculating. Like, do I really want to give that? I don't know if I want to. I think I still might want that. Maybe I could get, no, I don't know. Okay, maybe I'll just give it away. Okay. No, I kind of feel bad about it. I really actually wanted it, but now I give it away. I can't actually get it back from now. And this is a kind of calculating mind that's always like moving in my mind around giving. I could see it. And I don't think that's actually a very good virtue. That's not a very skillful use of the mind. And being in the monastery and being within the Buddhism, I actually have been very inspired because I've met people not like that. They just give completely selflessly, without a second thought. And I go, wow, that's quite something. I sometimes see lay people who come to the monastery and they just give completely selflessly, and I feel pretty ashamed. I'm like, wow, this person's far more generous than I am in my own heart. There's that kind of completely purity of heart in the giving, and that's really what the Buddha is trying to teach, or the Dharma is trying to teach. It's not so much the actual gift that is being given. If it's a cup, we have ulambana. Actually, that's why people are going, why is all this stuff in the middle of our worship hall, our Buddha hall? It's because we actually just had a ceremony today, which is called ulambana, where many people come and make offerings to the monastery. And so it's, you can see the generosity of people right in front of us. And so the spirit is we give without any regret, any stinginess, and with a heart of equanimity. And this word equanimity is also a very important word in Buddhism. It's a very important virtue. In Sanskrit, it's called upekkha. And what it means is that the mind is even and still. It's like, you could say, sometimes it's given the word impartial. It's not biased. Sometimes we see something, he's my friend, so I treat him a little bit better. He's somebody I find I want to be on the good side of, so I do something to kind of get a little bit of favoritism from him, such and such. But the Bodhisattva is completely impartial, completely equal and fair with everything. And also in the mind, it's completely even and still. And this was something also when I came into the Dharma, I really learned about. It's not something I really learned, I think, so much in society. Usually in society, life is like this. And we encourage the kind of excitement. That's really where we feel like we're alive. The kind of, and if you're in high school or young person, often we talk about drama. And the thing with the drama is really painful, but somehow that also makes us feel like we're actually alive and we can identify with it. And it makes us feel like, we're actually doing something. But the Buddha Dharma says, actually, if you can find this even stillness of mind, you'll find that you can actually go deeper into your heart, see true wisdom, and you'll find an inner peace and happiness that's beyond the ups and downs of the world. And that to me was a new concept. But usually, when I was in college, the spirit was, you study hard, you play hard. So you work really, really hard and kind of force yourself, but you kind of get yourself a little bit stressed out, going to school, doing all this stuff, and then finally you finish, and then just go out and play, and you kind of relax and do a bunch of things, and then back in the same cycle, and just kind of up and down, up and down, up and down. And you could say it's not, Buddhism doesn't say it's bad, but it just says, if you want to go deeper, actually, there's another way to be. And this is with a heart of equanimity. And if we cultivate a heart of equanimity, basically, we see things without getting ourselves attached to it, without ourselves identifying with it, completely selfless. And that spirit is something the Bodhisattva manifests and develops. Right? It's not to say that when we say unattached, we mean we don't care for people. In fact, we deeply care about people, but we don't care from a place of selfishness. We don't care about somebody because that person can do something for me, or that person has a special relationship with me. That's my such and such friend, or that's my such and such relative. Therefore, I'm doing this for them, right? Actually, we do it before them because they're a living being. We want to help them. We care about them, and that can be extended to everybody. It's not just because they're a relative. It doesn't mean that we should therefore not care about our parents. It doesn't mean that at all. It means that we want to expand the measure of our minds, expand the measure of our hearts. And so the Bodhisattva is doing that here. And so here, when we just see that little line, he can graciously give away all things with equanimity, free of stinginess and regret. That's a really profound state, if you think about it, right? It's a really profound state that he can actually just give completely selflessly. And that's something we really can, you could say, aspire to in our own life. So in the sutra lecture, the spirit is, if you can just learn one thing in the sutra lecture and just remember it, that's enough. You don't need to learn a lot. We just, in this as one sentence, if we can say, okay, I've learned that, can I give graciously with complete equanimity, without any stinginess and regret? And just remember that one sentence and take that for this week, and just throughout this week say, can I give in this way? That's enough. That's enough. That's a really, you could say powerful, you can say really effective Dharma practice, in terms of giving. Okay. So if there's any questions, please ask as well. This is a little bit interactive. If you have anything you would like to say.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the time. It's like close to 8:15, and Dhamma Master lies and down yet. And I'm just hoping you just continue speaking. So actually, this morning we had the Ulambana ceremony, and just to provide some context, the Ulambana ceremony all came about because the Buddha's disciple Mahamagayana, who is known as the foremost in spiritual ability, upon his awakening, the very first thing he did when he was awake, when he had wisdom, very first thing he did was to look for his parents. He wanted to know where his parents were, because his parents had died, and because now he had the ability, just like maybe almost like, say, suddenly you discover Google, and I'm going to Google this. He had that ability. He had built-in Google. So he
Where is my mother?
Yeah,
He said, where is my mother?
He Googled, and to his horror, he found that his mom had been reborn in the hells. And so what he did was he when he visited his mom and the house, apparently you don't have enough food to eat. So his mom has been really hungry, and he gave her a bowl of food. But she could not eat the food because her own karma prevented, when she put the food in the mouth, it turned into burning coals.
Add something? Yeah. So, but well, actually, one thing, if you were to read the sutras, I don't know if people remember what happened when she got the food. Do people remember right before what happened? Does anybody? Yeah, Angela? Yeah, she does. Yeah, so she took the food, hid the food behind herself, and wanted to eat it. She didn't want anybody else to see the food because she wanted the food. So we have this spirit of stinginess. That's what leads us into, you could say, negative states of mind, is that mind of stinginess. She wanted to keep it just for herself. And then when she took the food, right, it became fire. And this mindset of scarcity, right, rather than generosity.
Yeah. So when I read that, sometimes I interpret it to be stinginess means a very close mind. So it's equivalent to states like when your mind can't see, when you're in depression, when you're angry, and Dharma Master Lai is here.
Yeah, you can finish.
So just to wrap things up really quickly, as Dharma Master Lai takes his seat, is that when I was thinking about equanimity, and in Ulambana, it's a practice of giving on behalf of your parents first, and then is for you extend that sense of gratitude to other members of your family and to your loved ones. And what the Bodhisattva does is he extends it to all living beings. So I was trying to figure out how you could give with equanimity, because the Bodhisattva does that effortlessly. That's a state he has achieved. And I realized that for us, what the Bodhisattva is trying to do is inspire us just to try our best. All we can do is to try our best. And giving to the Buddha or giving to someone who you have a lot of respect for. And if you are mindful of when you do that, what is the feeling? For example, our teacher, I've heard from many people that when they are next to the teacher, they have a sense of always wanting to try their best. They always want to be their best. It's so weird speaking to all of you right now because everyone's looking at Dharma Master Lai.
So we were very happy that Dharma Master Lai came. We need to practice equanimity, so we can't get too happy. But Dharma Master Lai we would like to maybe invite you to maybe say a couple stories. So what we just explained was this passage on happiness, the practice of happiness of the Bodhisattva. From here, it's in the 10 practices chapter. So it just says the Bodhisattva is very generous. Maybe if you have stories of Master Hua being generous or anything you would like to share, I think we'd be very grateful to hear any stories you have. Okay.
To the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the Venerable Master, the Great Assembly, Omitofo.
Amitofo.
They wanted me to come talk. I don't really know how to lecture very well, especially on the sutras. It's pretty insane. But yeah, okay. Well, I don't know, what I've ever been able to glean, to understand from the Avatamsaka is it's an explanation of what it's like to be a bodhisattva. And to me, that's inconceivable. I mean, it's like you're trying to talk about, the best way I can try to talk about it is if you're like a student and you want to be a pilot, and you're working at the airport, sweeping the sidewalks and cleaning the airplanes, washing them for everybody, so they might give you a ride up in a little airplane. I'm at that state. And we're talking about astronauts. We're talking about the space shuttle. We're talking about people, you know, that are way up there in terms of their wisdom and power. And so, to me, it's kind of ludicrous to talk to everybody about the state of a bodhisattva. But so all I can do is just talk about my experiences with the Master, who I believe is obviously bodhisattva. At least he's been a bodhisattva with me for 30 years that I've been around him, or 40, or how many years I've known him. And it's like this sentence says, he's free of stinginess and regret. I mean, Shifu absolutely was not stingy. Now, in the sense that stinginess in the sense of greediness for yourself, that kind of stinginess. Do you need to translate all this? No, you don't. Oh. And so, stinginess, when you talk about stinginess, it means greedy stinginess, like somebody who doesn't, like a rich person who doesn't want to let anybody have any of their wealth, that kind of stinginess. And but in another kind of stinginess, you can say, is the stinginess of being very frugal. Shifu was extremely stingy when it came to being frugal. He didn't waste things. He used to be, I mean, to the point of almost ridiculousness. He would take envelopes in the mail that would come, and he would write on both sides of the envelope and then open it up and write on the inside of the envelope before he would even think about throwing it away. That's the kind of stinginess he was. He was extremely frugal. And here he is with a bunch of very spoiled little Americans who have been brought up, war babies, who most of us war babies, we were pretty much spoiled, and given all kinds of stuff, and we're Americans. We've never had this kind of, he came from Manchuria. I mean, he was in Manchuria during the time of the Japanese occupation. You can imagine. I mean, people were fighting over a grain of rice, you know. That's how extreme it was. So he had to grow up in that kind of world where people were literally dying of starvation, right and left, and being mistreated by the Japanese. And so Shifu grew up in that kind of environment. And it's like people in the U.S. who grew up during the Depression, like my grandparents and stuff. They're very also like that. They had that kind of a way about them where they never waste anything because they know what it's like to be extremely poor. Now, of course, up in the little village Shifu lived in, he was about 30 U.S. miles south of Harbin, which is way up north. It's like in Edmonton, Canada. Even higher than that. It's very, very cold. So people really suffered up there. And that's how he always was with everything. He was very, very frugal. So you can say he was, a lot of people think, well, Shifu was really stingy. But he was very, very frugal. There's a difference. But he was extremely generous. On the other hand, he was extremely generous with everything he did. So at this one hand, he was extremely frugal. On the other hand, he was extremely generous. And another thing I noticed, it's really hard to understand because we just haven't experienced that with people. But he just didn't have a self. There was no me. He had no me to protect. He always just gave. He was always giving to people. And that's what they're talking about, the practice of the Bodhisattva. I mean, his heart was like huge. And so he was always not trying to be number one. He was always the last to take things, you know. It's just everything he did is like that. I mean, it's hard to believe that because you can't believe it if somebody's telling you that. But when you're around somebody that long and you've lived with them so many years, you can't say, you just, it's just obvious. It's, if he was stingy, it would manifest in some way, or if he was greedy for himself, it would manifest in some form. But it never did with Shifu. He was a bodhisattva. That's the mind of a bodhisattva. So there's these two dichotomies. You had Shifu being very stingy with things like envelopes, very careful with everything he used, and was always admonishing us to be not to be so wasteful, because we're very wasteful. We're Americans, we waste everything. We don't think anything. I'll just throw this pen away. It's not writing. What are you doing that for? Why are you wasting that? Or somebody throw a pencil away. There's a lot more left on that pencil. You can use that a lot more. Bring it back. Get out of the trash can. So everything, every little thing we say, we don't even think twice about. Shifu would have that. He would hoard it. In fact, people used to give him all kinds of things, all kinds of baobais, we call them, precious things. And he'd store them in his room. Mostly because he didn't want us to become greedy for stuff. And he would never even use it or even look at it. He didn't care about this stuff at all. He would just put all this junk that people would give us all these fancy things, and he just nice boom box. Oh, we'll store that up there. We don't need a boom box. And then somebody else would give him a really nice radio. Oh, we'll put that in the shelf up there. And he would never even look at it again. But it would be all in his room. And once in a while, he'd have somebody go in there and clean up his rooms, usually a bhikshuni, or sometimes a laywoman, if he was a long-time disciple. Because he'd let him come in there and clean up. And if anything in that room was even slightly different than before they went in there, they would really get it from him. He would really scold them. Who told you to go? What, you stealing? Are you stealing? He goes, and they go, no, Shifu, no. What are you doing? Who told you to move that over there? Ah! Goes like, and but he was just teaching them, to be more frugal and be more careful, be more mindful of what they do. He didn't really care about that stuff. He didn't care what you do. But it's funny because some people would say, well, had been around Shifu, would say, well, Shifu has always been very, very stingy. He said, no, he's been very, very frugal. There's a difference between being frugal and being stingy. Because he didn't really care. He had no attachments. One time, people wanted to donate a car, give Shifu a car. So they gave him the money. He says, okay, whatever car you want, Shifu, we don't care, we'll buy it. Please just pick the car you want. So he sent Heng Guan and myself out, former Heng Guan. We went out. He says, you go to all the car dealers in San Francisco. Pick up all the major car dealers. Go there and pick up their brochures and bring them back to me. I said, oh, okay, sure. So we went all over the place, picking up these brochures. And then we came back, and Shifu had them spread out all over his room, all over the floor. This brochure. Oh, let's look at that one. Oh, let's look at that one. Oh, that. So then he'd have them this way and that. He said, okay, call up this car dealer here and have them bring that car over. So we call up. And they said, no, well, you can come down and we'd be happy to give you. He said, no. You bring the car here to the temple. And they're so greedy to sell it. They finally did. They agreed to bring the car to sell it. So, and then we would get in the car and he said, okay, now. Shifu said, he took his E off, and he just had his POW. And he says, he didn't even have his POW, he just had his work clothes on. And he says, I'm going to get in the back seat, and when the person asks you who I am, just tell them I'm some old guy who likes to go for a ride. So we said, oh, okay, Shifu. And don't tell them who I am. Okay, Shifu. So the salesman brings the car around. So we're driving around, and this really, he's selling the car. So he's saying, oh, and we have this lovely little thing, the radio, blah, 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 and air conditioning, da, 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 da. He's pointing out all the features of the car. And then on the way back to the temple, after he's through giving his big speech about his car and showing all the wonderful things about it, Shifu would, from the back seat, he would just say, how much? And the guy, well, we'll give you a really good deal on this car, you know. And so back then, this is in the 1970s, middle to late 70s, so cars were selling for what? I think they were about 12, how much, 12, 13? Something like that. Now they're what, 30, 40. So anyway, back then 12, 15K was probably around what you'd be. 10 to 15K is fairly standard for a car back then. So they would say, I'll give you a 12,000, really good deal for this car. And Shiv would sit back there, and finally he would say something, I thinking 6,000, good price. And I give you cash, that's what Shiv would say. I give you all cash. And I go, oh no, sir, I can't take that. Oh. So they go back and forth. And we would watch that. And finally, one car dealer almost had the sale, because for a car salesman, ABC, always be selling, right? Always be selling. That ABC, always be something. I think it's ABC. It's always be closing, which means always make the deal, no matter what. Make the deal. And they don't realize that Shifu has wisdom, and he had this mind they're talking about right here. He can just see their state. And he has absolutely no interest in the car at all. Not the slightest attachment to it. He can care less if he buys it or doesn't buy it. And this is the worst case scenario for a salesperson, because they rely on your greed to sell you the car. They need to close the deal, and they need your greed to close it. And they had no idea that Shifu doesn't have any greed for that car at all. What he had greed for, or it's not even greed, but what he had was a desire to have that person see his Buddha nature. He wanted him to become a Buddha. He said, when I talk to a living being, I want him to become Buddha. I don't care if they're a car salesman or a bhikshu. I want him to become a Buddha. That's the only reason I come on this earth. That's what a bodhisattva, that's their whole trip. They don't care about nothing else. He said, we want you to see your true nature, and we want you to become a Buddha. And so we had two separate aims going on at the same time. We had a salesman trying to sell Shifu a car, and we had Shifu trying to get the salesman to see his true nature. So we had this kind of problem. So well, it wasn't really a problem, but it was for the salesman, because he's not closing very well. So he got to the point where he almost got Shifu to sign the deal, and we got to a really good price, and Shifu agreed, and just about ready to sign it, and then Shifu goes, I'm still thinking, maybe, I think we're down to about 8K or something. And Shifu said, I'm thinking 7,500, good price. So I can't take it anymore. I can't take it. And so the salesman jumps up and starts running out of the temple. And Shifu jumped up also and ran after him with the paper. I sign. So, but that's how he is. He just brings people to the point where they can't take it. He's right to the point where they're so attached. He wants to break that attachment. And all he cares about is that person's true nature. He cares about their Buddha nature. He doesn't care about the car. You don't care if we get the car, don't get the car. Who cares? He cares about the car at all. So that's a kind of experience of somebody who's got the way. I mean, that's truly kind of experience that we always had with Shifu. One time, former Heng Ju, who did the first 3 steps, 1 bow, Sambui Bai trip, Heng Ju, Heng Yo, former Heng Ju and I, and Shifu said, let's go take a look at some buses to buy. So there was a religious, one of these religious churches that had a bunch of school buses they were going to sell, and they were going to buy new ones, so they wanted to sell their older ones. So we went to take a look. So this was a fundamentalist religious Christian community, and the people showing us the buses were, they were Christian. And so we were going through the buses, and we're looking at them. And this person, Shifu says, well, I think we can buy, he starts negotiating with them. And the person said, well, if you can accept Christ in your heart, maybe we can even do a better deal. And Shifu said, okay, no problem. I accept Christ. Christ, but I don't believe so, sir. I don't think you really accept. Oh, yeah. And they didn't understand. Shifu absolutely accepted Christ. No problem. He said, Christ is a great bodhisattva. I have no problem accepting Christ. And they just couldn't believe it. They just couldn't believe Shifu was telling the truth. He says, absolutely accept Christ. No problem. And they still wouldn't come down on their prize. They said, no, is this true? No problem. Everything okay. So, I mean, that's how it was when we did things. And what happens with our own disciples is, because we all have attachments, especially when it comes to buying things, we really get attached. And like when we bought Wampa-chung, there was a lot of people involved in the buying of Wampa-chung that would become really attached to getting the property. Well, even Wampa-chung Shifu wasn't attached to. He says, we were working negotiations for that. Now, I wasn't involved personally in the negotiations. I have no business sense at all. So I didn't want to get involved. But the people who were involved, they'd get really attached. And we had left-home people that were at that time who were really wanting the deal. They really needed the deal to close. They were really afraid that the vinifera vineyards who were selling it weren't going to, they were going to back off the deal and ba. But Shifu, you get so attached to the negotiations that they try to sneak around Shifu. They try to go, oh well, maybe we can do that. The guy said, well, we need a little more money here, or we can't sell that, or we can only sell this part. But they didn't understand. The master, he understood exactly what's going on all the time, because he can see what's in their mind. And he's just going, you're not going to get anything by him. And not only that, I said, you guys need to back off and just let Shifu handle this. He knows what he's doing. You guys don't have any faith. You don't have any faith in your own teacher. You need to understand. Shifu really has wisdom. He understands the seller's mind completely, and he knows his break points. He knows when he'll sell and when he won't. You don't need to worry about it. Why are you so attached? What do you want? What are you grasping at? And so Shifu used that as a teaching device a lot of times to break us of our own attachments, because people really get attached. After we bought Wampa-chung, some of our lay people started licking their chops over those really nice houses up there because they were completely empty. The place was like empty. I think we only had a half a dozen of us up there the first year. It was 76 we bought it, I believe. So we bought it in 76, and Shifu just sent a half dozen people up. It was like Guofa, Guojian, and a couple other people. I think Guosun was up there, and to dig the well, have the well made for the water, and I think in Hengguan, and I think Guar, and a couple other disciples, just to kind of take care of things, but nobody else. Then one by one, or family by family, some of our lay people who were married, had families, started moving up there, and all of a sudden they kind of move into one of the houses. So Shifu, he just didn't say nothing. Nothing. He didn't say nothing about it. And you can see everybody agitating down at Gold Mountain to go up to Wampa-chung. They're always trying to think of ways to make excuse to go up there, even though they weren't invited to do so. And they're wondering, why is Shifu taking so long to move up to Wampa-chung? We just bought this place. It's huge. We need to start da-da-da-da-da. And Shifu would sit back. This going on for weeks. And he would not even say anything. As if nothing happened. It's like we bought Wampa-chung and nothing happened. And everybody's going, when are we going to move up there? And then finally one day, this is Heng Sure was getting ready to do Samboi by himself from L.A. with Heng Chao. And they were going to do their 3 steps, 1 bow trip. And then there was, at that time, we had Heng Shun in the office and me and Heng Sure. So Shifu came down one evening and he said, okay, you 3 people, one of you has to go up to Wampa-chung. I need you to help out up there. So decide amongst yourself who's going to go up. Well, Heng Sure obviously couldn't go up. He's ready to start his Samboi Bai trip. And then Heng Shun, at that time, he was the office manager at Gold Mountain. No way could he go up there. See, he had to take care of things at Gold Mountain. So obviously, Shifu was setting me up to go up there. He said, Shifu, I guess I have to go. He says, okay, no problem. He says, just go up and help out. I said, okay. but I don't know anything. That's okay. You just go up there. No problem. I take care of everything. No problem. I said, okay. So I felt a little better because Shifu's behind it. It's okay. Everything's you just don't try to go around your teacher. You'll be sorry. So I went up there, and I said, okay, well, he just wants me up here, probably some, help out wherever I can. And as soon as I got up there, he rings up again. He calls Dharma Master Heng Sure, Bhikshuni Heng Sure. She was up there, and he says, and she was taking care of the books. No, actually, Goar was taking care of the books. So he gave Heng Sure, he says, go over to the firehouse. That's where Goar was staying. Get all the books of what's going on there, all the accounts. They had all the accounts, and take them over and give them to me. I said, whoa. All of a sudden, here comes Heng Sure with a whole pile of books. The very next day, this huge pile of spreadsheets and account books. I don't know how to do accounting. And he dumps it in my lap and says, Shifu said you got to take care of this stuff here. I said, wait a minute. So Shifu calls up and goes, yeah, tell Goar to get out of the firehouse. He's no longer supposed to live there. Tell him to move into the Tathagata Monastery and live in one of the rooms there. He shouldn't be staying in the firehouse. Okay, Shifu. So Goar was running around in these Tai Chi pants and black things. He was acting like a Laoban. He says, well, I'm the manager up here. And he says, no, you're not. You go live in the monastery. Shifu wants you out of the firehouse. So he was kind of took the steam out of him. And then at that time, I believe there was, they had managed, the people that were up there had managed to rent out some of the places there without properly getting permission to do so from the master. And so what happened was they had a Montessori school in Great Compassion House, was running out part of Great Compassion House, a birthing center for women who are pregnant, also renting out one of the quads, and another outfit, I forget, there was another outfit there that was renting. All of them in the quad, all of them in the Great Compassion House, in those buildings. So Shifu the next day calls me up and says, okay, you go over there and give those people 2-week notice to move out. I said, so I had to go throw all these people out of there. I said, oh no, I'm going to be everybody's going to hate me. So I went over there and said, okay, well, here's your 2-week notice. We're going to need this, so I'm sorry, you'll have to leave. And they're all, they were all upset. And then not only that, he said, okay, there was I don't know if anybody's familiar with the City of 10,000 Buddhas, but there's a greenhouse up there, and behind the greenhouse is an old baseball field, baseball diamond. It used to be a baseball, where we played baseball. And that used to be the Ukiah Little League field, where the Little League would play. And they had been playing there for years when the Mendocino Hospital was in full function. And even during the time when the Vineyard owned it, and they still leased it out to the Ukiah Little League. And then Shifu says, we need those people to also move. I said, but Shifu, they've been here for like 20, 30 years. There's like American and apple pie. You just don't throw out the Little League. I mean, they're going to really, really think negatively of us. He says, no problem. Just tell them they have to find a new field. Well, I was really upset, but I had to do it because I knew better than to oppose Shifu. You just don't do it. So I went up there and said, okay, you guys, I have to get you guys some notice. We're going to need this field and this area here. We're going to start having gardens and stuff, so we're going to need it. And so I thought, oh boy, now the boom's really going to fall down on us. All of you guys are really going to hate us. And so what happened is the Little League guy said, no, I'm glad you told us to finally leave. I said, really? Yeah, he says, we've been looking at this other field for a long time. We want to move, but we can't get enough people behind it. And now that you said that we have to move, they have no choice. We get to have the field we really want. So they were actually quite happy that we made them move. So that's how wisdom works. Shifu knew this. I didn't know it. Shifu knew it. And so I went and it turned out okay. And so it's just, that's how things worked up there. And so slowly, people started moving up to the city 10,000 Buddhas. It didn't happen overnight. It took quite a number of months before things started getting pretty active up there. So that's my story about disciples of the Buddha. What is the Mahasattva's practice of happiness?
Any stories of Master Hua being very generous in terms of giving things away? Anything specific? Do you remember anything?
Yeah, I mean, he just, first of all, he didn't really care about stuff at all, material things. And I just knew that that's the case. So as far as giving stuff away, it was nothing to him to give things. But for us, left home people, he was always careful with us about having people give us too much stuff. If they did make a lot of donations, he would kind of hoard it off somewhere so that we wouldn't get all afflicted by it. But on the other hand, for instance, the biggest example right off the top is we took that we bought 120 acres at the time, up in the Ukiah area. We bought 120 acres. And later on, he just gave it all to Samato's group. He just said, because they follow the precepts and they cultivate, and he just said, okay, here, take that. This has land been donated. It's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we just donate that so that you guys can have a place to cultivate. Because that's what the master really cared about. He wanted to make Buddhas, and he's not attached to whether they follow the Chinese tradition or Thai tradition. He's attached. That's not what he's attached about. He said he wanted to make sure if people cultivate and follow the precepts, fine. You go, here's this land that was donated. We had money donated to buy this property, and we bought it. We had it for a number of years, and then Shifu just donated it to them, and they prospered there now. They have, they're doing really well with that property. And that's the kind of thing. I mean, that's the kind of things he has a very big heart about. He's not attached to anything, so that's the kind of, he's just not greedy for stuff at all. He just said, it's like, he says, all these things that people are so attached to, brand new cars and stuff, to me it's just like crap. It's just like toilet. It's just like looking in a toilet. It means nothing.
I don't know if there's any questions.
Oh, me? It took a long time. I met Shifu in late '69, when they were still in Waverly Place, and then I started living full time at Gold Mountain Monastery in Mission District, San Francisco, in 1970. I think it's 71. I started living there full time, and as a layman. But I didn't even take refuge. I just lived there, and worked and helped out, and it took me a couple of years, two or 3 years before I even took refuge. I mean, everybody else, they'd come and take refuge within the first week or two. Me, after a year, I didn't dare want to take refuge because I didn't think I would be good enough to be Shifu's disciple, and I still don't think I still feel bad about taking refuge because I still am not good enough to be Shifu's disciple. But it took me a long time, so I kind of stayed there. Shifu was very, very patient and very kind to me. And he let me stay there. He never pressured me to take refuge, ever. Everybody else did, but not Shifu. And then over time, we did all kinds of different practices together. If I took refuge, and then we fasted, and we did all this stuff. And then all the time, former Hung Guan, he was always badgering me about, when are you going to leave home? When are you going to leave home? When are you going to leave home? Guys. So I figured, well, I better do this because I feel the pressure. People want me to leave home. So anyway, I went up there one day in 70, I think it was 75, before we bought City 10,000 Buddha, it was 75, I think. And at that time, former Hung Yin was there with Shifu, and there was an old Bhikshuni, where she was at that time a shamanee. She was very old. I think she was in her 90s, and she wanted to leave home in her 90s. And so she was up there, and Shifu was accepting people if they wanted to leave home. So he was up in his outside his room, in his guest room. So I said, well, this is the time. I guess I should go up there and bow to Shifu and ask him if I could leave home. So I went up there. And I thought, well, Shifu will finally be really happy to see that I'm come up to want to leave home. He's going to be really happy. So I went up there and I bowed 3 times and I said, Shifu, I'd like to leave home. He says, what do you want to leave home for? Who told you to come up here? What do you want to leave home? What for? I said, I thought Shifu would be very happy. He said, why? What for? What's your rush? And so he says, well, then he started talking about the Venerable Shulao, the Venerable Empty Cloud. He says, I know, because he knows I really like the cultivation of Empty Cloud, because he was a Chan master. And so he says, can you be like Empty Cloud? Did you know that Shulao sat for 2 to 3 weeks one time, in full lotus, and without getting up, and he was not in samadhi. This is before he had his awakening, so he wasn't even able to go into samadhi, and he stayed in full lotus for 2 weeks without moving. And can you do that? He says, then the reason he did that is because he wanted people to have faith in the Buddha Dharma. He wanted them to respect the Buddha Dharma. And he says, that's the kind of mind you have to be when you want to really cultivate. He didn't have any reward for doing that. He wasn't in samadhi. He didn't have his wisdom open at that time, so he wasn't able to enjoy the joys of samadhi. He was only able to sit there and suffer through it. And he did that to have people respect the Buddha Dharma. He says, that's the kind of mind you have to have if you want to leave home. And that really kind of floored me. That was really hard. I said, whoa. He said, that's the mind of a bodhisattva. So he didn't even get the rewards of enlightenment at that time, because Shifu knew I was really attached to waking up. And I said, it's really tough. So, and he says, that's a cultivator. He said, if you can do that, then you're a cultivator. He says, it's no great big deal if you can go into samadhi and sit for 2 weeks. But if you can do that without having the joys of the samadhi and without having your mind awakened to the way yet, and do it, that's a whole other thing. So that really impressed me. So that's kind of how I left home in short form. Well, I was always running away, because, the first time I met Shifu was back in '69, late '69, and through a bunch of causes and conditions, I was able to get former Hung Yin introduced me to Shifu. But even before I got upstairs, Waverly Place was it was a little Taoist temple at one time, and it was three stories up on this little Chinatown building. And it just had this really narrow little stairwell. You had to go up these stairs, and they're really narrow, old style. It's not up to code at all. It's really old. It's an old Chinatown building, and I remember Hung Yin Lani. She says, "Okay, now if you want, it's okay. I'll introduce you to the master, but you really have to want to become a Buddha." I said, whoa, wait. I don't even know what that means. I I just want to meet a good knowing advisor. I wanted to meet a good sage, somebody who's really got the way. And she said, come on upstairs. So I went up, and at that time, Shifu was showing all of the first five Westerners who left home was Heng Sure, Heng Jing, Heng Xin, Heng Yin, and Heng Sure. There's 5 Americans, and they all were shamis at that time. So the first time I met them, they were all shamis. They'd just come back from Taiwan, where they'd taken the shami precepts. And Shifu was showing them how to fold their sitting cloths. So he was there showing them how to, and then Heng Yin came up to Shifu and said, Shifu, there's this lay person here, he wants to meet Shifu. So Shifu kind of stopped, he looks and he laughs, he chuckles, and he goes, oh, so you finally got here. That's how I met Shifu. But when I met Shifu, I just knew from just the way he was that this person is real. I mean, I don't know how to describe this because it was just my experience. But I just said, whoa. It's almost like his eyes weren't attached to his body. I mean, it's like he had this kind of body, but it was just sort of a temporary apparition just to make it so he can work in the world. You know? But he just kind of looked at me and laughed. And before that, I had a dream. Before I even met Shifu physically for the first time, I had a dream that I was going to meet him. And only in my dream, I came up, and they were all sitting, the five left home people and Shifu were all sitting in a circle. And they all looked up at me as I walked in and laughed. That was my dream. They said, oh, he's here. So that's how I met Shifu. It was in '69. But then Waverly Place was, I don't know if you've seen pictures of it. It was a very small little place. It was maybe half the size of this Buddha hall in terms of floor space. And they had a table, and they had a big old Buddha that Shifu had built. It was a plaster of Paris Buddha. And they had an altar, but they had this table, instead of a bunch of bowing cushions like we have here, there was this big old table. And they had bowing cushions along the walls where people can sit and meditate along the walls. But in the middle was a big old table. And what Shifu was doing was he would sit down at the table, and people would bring their books, and he would start teaching them, teaching them about, he would lecture the sutras that way. He didn't do it in a formal setting like we have here in the early days. He'd just sit down like a professor, and he would just sit at the head of the table, and people would come up with the sutras and sit at the table, and then we'd have some people there who can speak Mandarin real well to help translate, and he would speak some Dharma, and then they would write it down, and of course all 5 of them were trying to learn Chinese like crazy. Heng Yin was the best at it because she has a didactic memory. So she was just picking it up, bang, bang, bang. You know, she could just speak Mandarin really quickly. And of course, I went right over my head completely. I had no idea what they were talking about, but they were there, and that's how he was teaching in Waverly Place. And at that time, they invited me to do. They were going to do a Shurangama session. Meditation session and recitation. So there was a combination of meditation and recitation. Mostly meditation. And then sutra. Mostly working on the sutras by sitting at the table. So I started doing that, and I really worked really hard. I really wanted to wake up. So I was sitting there in lotus, trying to sit in the lotus. I wasn't very good at it, but I was trying my best and face the wall. But where I was facing was a great big, they had all these pictures in the wall, and they had this great big, like a poster. And it was a photo of Shulao, Empty Cloud. And it's one of those pictures of him where he's sitting very rigid in lotus, and you can see his hand sitting there, and one of his fingers is missing. And so I asked Heng Sure, I said, what happened to his hand? He says, oh, he burnt that finger off. I said, oh. I said, these guys aren't playing around. This is not yoga. Yeah, I'm not in some kind of little hippie place here. This guy is really serious. So I'm getting a little nervous. And so then about a week into the session, Heng Sure, David Fox, he came in and said, okay, Shifu has agreed to let us give out applications for people who want to take refuge. If you want to take, because we had some Americans that floated in and wanted to try out the session. So there were some more people there. So people who want to take refuge and become Buddhist disciples can fill out this application. So, oh, okay, so I might as well do it. So I filled out the application. And then the next day, I keep looking at the picture of Shu Lao, and I'm getting more and more nervous. And then Heng Sure the next day comes in, he says, now, you people who fill out these applications, this is no small matter. He says, this is very important. If you want to take refuge, this is very serious. And this is for the rest of your life, that you're going to be a disciple of the Buddha and cultivate the way and practice the pure practices. And I'm going, I'm getting nervous, more and more nervous. So I say, boy, these guys are not playing games. And so then I look again at the Venerable Shu Lao sitting there really, I don't know, what am I going to do? So I got so much false thinking sitting in the meditation session there. My false thinking was going like that. So I finally jumped up and ran to the back where Shifu had a room in the back of Waverly Place up there. There was a little room, he had a little room. So I went back there and I go, bop, 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 on the Shifu's door. And Heng Sure saw me jump up and run back there. So he runs behind me. He goes, what are you doing? You can't interrupt the master. That's his room. You can't go pound on his door. What are you, crazy? Get away from here. He goes, at that moment, Shifu opened his door. And he goes, oh, no problem. Come in, come in, come in. No problem. Sit down. Everything okay. Everything okay. He's going. And so Heng Sure backed off. He said, okay. So Shifu says, don't worry, no need, no. I said, I'm sorry, Shifu, I can't take refuge. I'm not ready. I thought I was ready, but I'm not ready. No problem, no problem. Take a break, take a break, he kept saying. Take a break. So that's always been my experience with Shifu. I try to go forward a little ways, and then I get all freaked out and run away, and then I come back again. So he gave me a Guo name of Guo Wei. To return, to come back. And then later when I left home, he gave me Hung Lai, to constantly returning, because I was constantly running away. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Okay, 9 o'clock. Omitobo.
Amitabha. You want more stories? So tonight we had a very special guest. Our Master Hua was able to come share some stories about what it was like in the early days with Master Hua. And we also got a chance to go over the sutra text. So tonight, what we usually end with is the dedication of merit, which is on the back of the text here. I don't know if we still, we often kind of come in a little bit later. I don't know if you want to answer any questions or you want to let people ask a couple things. Would you like to?
Answer questions?
Or have story requests?
Oh, I don't.
Or you pretty much feel like, Does anybody want to ask any final questions? Life Usher is here. If not, we can do our announcements. We have to ask something specific. Okay, please. That's a good question.
Yeah, I had all kinds of faults.
But I think we need to repeat the question real quick. The question was, as he's coming from the Theravada tradition, and so he's very interested in that practice, but he's also wondering about the Bodhisattva vows, and the Bodhisattva is making this kind of vow for enlightenment, but he has a difficult time with the metaphysical constructs of the Mahayana path, which It's sometimes hard for the particular Western construct to understand or to approach. I don't know if I paraphrased it quite right. Yeah. And so he's asking if there's any response to that.
Well, I'm in the same boat. I mean, like, I'm not a scholar of Buddhism. A lot of our disciples have come through the universities, even the early ones, like Dharma Master Heng Jing, let's see, it was Heng Jing, Heng Xin, Heng Yin, Heng Sure. Heng Yin came from UW, up in University of Washington in Seattle. Ron Epstein was one of the first Westerners to meet Shifu. He came to Harvard, then he went and got another degree over in Seattle, over in UW, and in Buddhist studies. And that's a lot of our disciples got interested in Buddhism in the very thing you were talking about, through the metaphysical, intellectual approach to the Dharma, or the teaching school, as we say. And my experience is absolutely, totally different than that. So I can't really be much help to you in terms of the metaphysical stuff, because I'm the same way you are. I said, what are they talking about? It's very intellectual. You know, and the reason it's very intellectual, it's for intellectuals. It's one of the schools of the Buddha Dharma. You know, it's when the Buddha was in the world, there wasn't any of this metaphysics. It was just Buddha Dharma. He just spoke sutras. He just sat with his disciples, and they'd memorize what he said. They didn't write it down, because they didn't write down things in them days. They used to have, in those days, they treated memorization very seriously. So they used to sit down, and they'd get their best memorizers, people with didactic memories. They would sit there and get their best memorizers, and they would put them in a group. And they would go over like the Buddha would speak, he would speak. And when he spoke, that's a sutra. So whatever lecture he's giving, they would memorize what he's saying. It's inconceivable. They're almost like tape recorders. It's inconceivable to us today to think about this, but that's what they did. They actually memorized what he was saying in real time. And then they would check each other. They would sit in a group and double check each other to make sure they got it right. So he said that at that time, and then he said that, and they said, yeah, that's right. And they said, no, that's wrong. And, you know, they'd correct themselves. And they carried on that tradition for hundreds of years. They didn't start writing this stuff down until when? When did they start writing sutras down? 500 years? Something like that? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Nobody really even knows. But they found some old papyrus leaves and stuff that were about 500 years after the Buddha's nirvana. So, I mean, that's kind of where that's where that's coming from. So, yes, I guess I'm trying to answer your question, but I'm not doing very good. I'm just saying that I have the same issue. I mean, I can't intellectually get into Buddhism that way. I just have to approach it from the practical, sweep clean approach. I'm the dummy with the broom. Because they had this person that was really dumb. Everybody looked down on him, and he wasn't too smart, and he felt real bad, and he told the Buddha, I'm just so stupid. Could you? And the Buddha says, can you sweep? Can you sweep with the broom? Yeah. Can you say sweep clean when you do it? Yeah. I said, well, just do that. And he became enlightened just doing that. So so Buddhism is. I just look at it as all-encompassing in terms of everybody has different doors. They have different dharmas. They have different approaches to dealing with this great question of birth and death. And some people do it through the teaching school. Other people do it through the practice of the precept school. Other people do it through the recitation of the Amitabhas, just say, I don't want all this intellectual stuff. I just want to recite the Buddha's name and become, and get reborn in Amitabha's pure land. I don't need all this intellectual stuff. That's it. So you can say that's kind of almost like a Christian tradition. It's like pure faith. I know it's all there. I'm just going to recite and behave myself, follow the precepts. So, that's how these schools evolved over millennia. But originally, I mean, you think about it, during the Buddha's time, there wasn't any schools. They didn't have any schools of Buddhism. They just had the Buddha Dharma.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Aspiration for enlightenment. Your questions, I think, is particularly, he's saying, is it about the actual aspiration for awakening, or particularly the kind of the, I heard the metaphysical constructs, the kind of the worldview almost that's presented. Mm. Mm. Yeah, yeah. I felt the same way actually when I started studying the Mahayana tradition myself. I came very much through the Theravada door in the Thai Buddhism. I came through a lot of the Abhayagiri Thai forest tradition that Master Hua gave him the land, so somehow had an affinity. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was attached to just Chan. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to bow Buddha. I didn't even know if that's too religious. I didn't want to do any religious stuff. I just wanted to sit and meditate and wake up. That's it. Pure Zen, pure Chan. I'm the American. I don't want to do all. I was a Catholic when before. I don't want no more ceremonies. I had that my whole life. I don't like. So, when I first started doing Chan sessions, I would grunt, sit there, trying to wake up. Who? And then Shifu came into the hall one day and he looks down at me. What doing? I says, Shifu, I'm trying to wake up. Stupid. He says, you can't. Don't be greedy for enlightenment. It's going to come when it comes. He says, walking, sitting, and lying down, you just cultivate. Don't worry about if you're going to become enlightened or not enlightened. It'll happen when it happens. He says, if the more you're attached to it, the more it's going to run away. You're not going to get it. You can't be attached to enlightenment, because that was my biggest problem. And he used to say, all you people, you're also attached to these schools. He says, there's no schools. He says, when you sit and meditate, you're practicing the precepts, so you can say that you're practicing the Vinaya school. When you're bowing Buddha and you're reciting, you're actually doing Chan, because you're focusing on Amitabha's name and you're just focusing on bowing and being here now. That's basically what Chan is. And then it's same with when you're doing other kinds of practices. Everybody's attached to these different practices, and it says that you don't. That's why he taught us all 5 schools. He was the Tripitaka master. He says, learn all the schools. Don't be so attached to one or the other. They all benefit each other. They all intertwine. There's no such thing as a school anyway. He says, in the future, we have 5 schools now in Buddhism. There's going to be 10. Then there's going to be 20 or 30. It doesn't really matter. He says, it all comes back to cultivating. And it all comes back to following the precepts and cultivating. It always comes back to that.
Okay. So, anything else? No. Okay, so we have. So let's see. Maybe quickly some announcements. What we have is this week is going to be the start of our university classes. So tomorrow we have Buddhism for the Modern Mind with Doug Powers, talking about various, you could say, modern topics. I believe the first week topic is something like pleasure demystified. Not tomorrow? Monday. Yeah, sorry. Not Monday. That's Sunday. Monday night. Monday at 7:30. And so if people are interested in that, that's a really good place to plug into. On, I believe, Wednesday nights, we have, actually it's the first Tuesday, Abhayagiri monks are going to be coming. I believe Ajahn Pasano and maybe a few other monks will be coming to speak tonight in the evening. They'll lead tea time in the back, and then followed by Dharma talk here in the Buddha Hall at 7:30. And on Wednesday, we have Stephen Tainer's class. Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with the Thai forest tradition. I'm guessing you have some relationship with that? Yeah, but yeah. So I'm guessing you know the tradition there. There was definitely a very deep friendship between Ajahn Sumedho and I don't know if Life actually went to. Did you go to Europe with Master Hua?
Mm-hmm.
You did. Oh, we'd missed those stories. But he actually went to Europe with Master Hua to see Ajahn Sumedho.
Yeah, we stayed there with them in London.
London. Yeah.
Yeah, and they had two way places at the time.
Okay.
They had what was it? I can't remember the names of them.
Amravati.
Yeah,
and
Avatamsaka and
Chikhurs.
Chikhurs. Yeah, that's right. We went to both of them.
Yeah.
It's really something.
Yeah. So, but anyways, so yeah. So basically, they'll be coming down on Tuesday to give the lecture. They come every first Tuesday. Wednesday we have class by Stephen Tainer on meditation. Thursday nights we have the East Bay Insight Meditation Group here that gives a regular talk. And on Friday night we have the Dr. Verhoeven, Martin Verhoeven, lecturing on the Sixth Patriarch Sutra. So that's a Chan text, a very important Zen, you can say Zen text. And so if people are interested in that, you're welcome to come. We broadcast the Friday lecture and this lecture, Saturday lecture. So those are the ones that are broadcast online. And then on Saturday night, we have this lecture like usual. We have the full day of ceremonies from the morning on Saturdays to the afternoon. And then following the following week, so that's going to be the regular schedule from here on out for the rest of the semester. This is the beginning of the fall semester.
So for those of you who didn't get that, we have it all on a poster on the board.
Yeah. And then the following week, if people are interested, we have an Earth Store recitation session at the City of 10,000 Buddhas. People are also welcome to join that. And let's see, what else? So I think that's about, we also have a guest monk coming, Dharma Master Da An, who is the abbot of Dongling Monastery, which is a very famous Pure Land monastery in China. He'll be coming to give a talk on the Earth Store Sutra, kind of the outline of the Earth Store Sutra, on September 5th, 2 to 4 p.m. If people are interested in joining, please do. We'll have an English translation. He'll speak Chinese, we'll have an English translation. And then that evening, it will start the Earth Store session at the Siddhanta Buddhas. No, it's a full week, 7 days. So they recite the Earth Store Sutra every day and Earth Store Bodhisattva's name. Starting on not this upcoming week, but the following week. So about a week from now. So next Saturday, 1 week from now, we'll start. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or things I missed out on? Okay. So we have the dedication of merit, which is on the back of that Dharma request sheet. This is, you could say, another practice that we do. That is, you could say, a sharing of blessings, wanting to send out the goodness from our sutra lecture, and the practices of being here, listening to the Dharma, not going on doing bad things during this time. And we do a sitting and then we bow to the Buddhas. And so if people would like to join in, you can chant together and send out the goodness wherever you would like to send it. If there's a lot of different, I think, sufferings and issues in the world, you can send it there. You have a loved one that just passed away, you can pass it to that person. You can send to all living beings, hoping they'll wake up to become Buddhas. So it's really up to you wherever you want to send it. But the most important is that we have a sincere heart. Okay? So I invite everybody to put your palms together. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. because our hearts are one. This world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, we can bow. And so please stand. Okay. Master Hua, you want to sit? Okay, go 3 times. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. Namo Da Fang Guang Bo Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Hai Hui Fo Pu Sai. Namo Da Fang Guang Bo Hua Yan Jing.